It's just a... And green. So green. To green, touching down there when you don't.
Almighty God, we pledge ourselves to work in harmony for the social, cultural and economic well-being of our rural city. Help us to be wise in our deliberations and fair in our actions, so that prosperity and happiness shall be the lot of our people. Amen. The Horsham Rural City Council acknowledges the 5 traditional owner groups of this land: the Watchabolik, Wagaya, Jupagog, Jardwa and Jardwa Charlie people. We recognise the important and ongoing place that all Indigenous people hold in our community. We pay our respects to the elders, both past and present, and commit to working together in the spirit of mutual understanding and respect for the benefit of the broader community and future generations. Thank you. Please be seated. Welcome councillors and staff and also members of the gallery and also the media to our Ordinary Council meeting tonight. My name is Councillor Mark Radford, Mayor of the Horsham Rural City. I advise the public that tonight's council meeting will be recorded to maintain an audio archive, and segments will also be video recorded as we're trialling new technology. Move to item number 4, apologies. Are there any apologies this evening? Ms Murphy, I understand there's an apology. Is that correct? Yep.
Yeah, we don't normally record the offices.
Okay. So therefore there are no other apologies. We'll keep moving then. Item number 5, leave of absence requests. Are there any requests for leave of absence? heard. Thank you. Item 6 is the confirmation of the minutes. The minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on the 26th of November. There's a recommendation there, councillors, which has been moved by Councillor Grimble and seconded by Councillor Power. Councillor Grimble? Councillor Power? All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. Item 7 is conflicts of interest. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have two. 9.8 is the petition. We own property that owns the wetlands in Queen Street.
Yes.
And 15.2 is my husband is part owner of the Squash Rules.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Any other conflicts of interest? Okay, we'll note those two. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Item number 8, public question time. There are no questions for tonight's meeting. Number 9, officers' reports. 9.1, Horsham Performing Arts, nomination of directors. Councillors, the purpose of this report is to nominate Councillor Josh Koenig, Councillor Pam Clark and Councillor Les Power to the board of the Horsham Performing Arts Company, which has been set up to manage the fundraising activities for the Horsham Town Hall and Performing Arts Centre. It's a recommendation there, councillors. Moved by Councillor Goulven and seconded by Councillor Robertson. Councillor Goulven.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just happy to endorse the recommendation as it is.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Robertson. Any further speakers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. 9.2, Gifts, Benefits and Hospitality Policy Report. The purpose of this report is to endorse the draft revised Gifts, Benefits and Hospital Policy. The recommendation.
I'm happy to endorse the draft revised Gifts, Benefits and Hospitality Policy with the inclusion of a registry of gifts from the donating side of the policy.
So could you say that again with the registering?
I'm happy to move the recommendation, but I want included in the policy a register of gifts from those donating gifts.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so would you be happy, Councillor Grimble, if we amended the policy to reflect that rather than having a specific resolution?
Yeah, I think that's
That's streamlined.
Okay, thank you. Would someone like to second that, please? Councillor Clark. Councillor Grimble.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Coverage through the policy, and again, it's important that we have these sort of policies in place. Just adding to the comments that I did make, one of the things I believe that needed to be beefed up a little bit was a register of the gifts, particularly coming from either members of the council, whether it be through yourself or the CEO, directors, councillors, or staff, and having a register of who's the donor, the date, function, the authorisation, whether it be by a resolution of council or indeed through some other process, value, benefit, community expectation, acceptance, and a declaration of conflict of interest by the donor. I think the policy picks up receiving gifts quite well, but that'll just complete the policy. But look, these sort of things are part and process of just having good governance and good processes in place to make sure we're open, transparent and accountable. So I think it's a relatively straightforward policy for us to adopt with the slight amendment which I picked up and spoke to Mr Harrison and our CEO earlier in the day.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Grimble. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it's a difficult one, a gifts register and how delicate it is, and it's good in the policy. It picks up that you go along to a meeting, you're the guest of a meeting of a club or a service club or a group, and they present you with a crochet bookmark that someone's done for you, or a posy of flowers that they've picked out of their own garden for you, to say thank you for being there for their meeting. And it is really difficult to say no to those sort of personal gifts or the small little things. I know I've got 2 cups at home that I've been to the self-funded retirees, and it's their AGM, and they put Councillor Pam Clark. Well, it's a bit hard to hand that over to the CEO, and it's obviously less than $20. But all these things add up, and we need to be cognisant of what we do and how we do it,
Yes.
and the perception to the community.
Yes.
And I know Ms Frankham and I have talked about this in my last term, and I know that now on the top of the mayoral notice that goes out when there's a function to say what is required of the mayor, I know that on the top of that now it states that we have a no-gift policy, and that makes it a lot simpler and easier for the group to understand, and for anyone who's stepping up in the mayor's position to understand that, you know, if possible, we need to refuse or to let them know that we are not accepting gifts anymore. So I think that's really important. It also acknowledges in the policy that, for example, when a Chinese delegation come out of here to visit us, it is part of their culture to give a gift, and it recognises that. But it also recognises that those gifts need to be handed over. They are gifts for the organisation more than personal gifts. So I think there's a recognition in there of that. It's not an easy thing to bring out all of the delicate parts of gift giving and how important that is to some groups and some cultures. So I think the policy is very broad and understands and gives everyone a clear parameter of what they can and can't do as councillors and as mayors.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Are there any speakers against the motion? Any other speakers? Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support exactly what's been said, and having worked in an area where these sort of subjects come up, the having clear policy is what protects us. A clear set of rules, which I think we've got with Councillor Grimble's addition. It doesn't actually matter the value, really, so long as the circumstances of the receipt or the giving are accurately recorded, then there can be no issues. And Councillor Clark, I'm just wondering about that cup in front of you.
No, it is. It's not mine.
No, it's all right. I know the story for that one. Thank you,
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Any other speakers? Could I also add on a similar line, there is sometimes a line you've got to walk between accepting people's gracious gift and not wanting to offend them or upset them. And these policies usually come out of people doing the wrong thing. And so it's important that we do follow the rules. And I think it's what's proposed seems fair enough, and I'm happy with the addition as well from a giving point of view. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. 9.3 is council resolutions. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on outstanding and completed council resolutions with a recommendation there, councillors. Moved by Councillor Clark. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Koenig. Councillor Clark.
This is a list of virtually a report card on how we're going with the resolutions that we put up in council, and where we've got to, how many we've actually resolved, and those that are outstanding that need to be resolved. So it's really a report card on how we're going. So I'm happy to pass these things.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Koenig.
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Are there any speakers against the motion? Any other speakers? Councillors, I'd just like to pick up one of the items mentioned, dates back to the 5th of February this year, 1052, and it talks about the City Gardens estate. And the reason I just wanted to mention it is that we were working there this week, and it was very encouraging to see the water birds. The water was there, full up, water birds, including a couple of pelicans there, and it did look quite beautiful. So congratulations to Mr Martin and his team for there, and as an example of a petition, people in our community highlighting an issue and council working with the community to solve it, and certainly seeing the City Gardens estate this week was very encouraging. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. Item 9.4 is request for inclusion on council's street name list for the name Aisbet. The purpose of this report is to request that the name Aisbet be added to the council's street naming list. the recommendation there, which has been moved by Councillor Goulven and seconded by Councillor Koenig. Councillor Goulven.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a few notes written down. It was just to do with the recognition that we have within our community, people wanting to put their names and recognise people in their families and having their names come forth. It's just showing that our community is one that people want to be a part of, and I think that's a great thing.
Thank you. Councillor Koenig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like the stories behind all of these name requests that come through, and here's another good one about Edgar William Aisbert. I think I'm not sure if we do, but I think it'd be a cool idea if we shared them through our Facebook as well when new names get onto the list. Maybe here's the story behind this name.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Koenig. Any speakers against the motion? Any other speakers? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I've known the Aisbert family all of my life, and I never knew this history, and I just think it's wonderful when the history of our community comes out like this, and we get to see another glimpse of how Horsham was developed and the wonderful characters and the wonderful history of how they developed from having, a horse-drawn to a first little truck and gradually building up to owning so many vehicles and bus lines. And I'm really happy for this to go through. I just think it's wonderful to hear these stories and to see them. And each time I'm really impressed by the history of this town and this community. It's wonderful to learn more.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Grimble.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to also support the inclusion of the Aisbert name on the council street list. And it is interesting to read through the history of what Edgar had actually done in his career and throughout his working life. But can I say that the Aisbert family were quite synonymous in the school bus carriers, and as many people would know, that he actually had a southern run. So Edgar Aisbert actually used to pick me up regularly at about 25 to 7 and get home about 10 past 5. And that relationship with the Aisbert family ran over a number of decades and continued on for quite some time. As we know, the Aisbert family still have business interests in Horsham, and I think the name is very worthy, and I appreciate the fact that the family wanted to put up this application, recognises the great work that Edgar done. There are elements of his life early in the days, particularly around the work in Dingula, and that he actually had worked on and been successful as part of his working life that I was unaware of. So it's good to read that from the perspective that knew him quite well and knew him as a probably one of his better bus records. I think.
Thank you, Councillor Grimble. Any other speakers? Also acknowledge the life of Mr. Aisbert, and it did prompt me to go into the lounge room last night and dig out the Horsham Street Name book. We have one, and it dates from the 1840s through to 1998. And sadly, the lady who put it together actually passed away before it was published. And the Horsham Historical Society picked up the book and published it 2 years later. But it is about 20 years out of date, Mr. Bowler, so it might be something that the council might consider doing. It is a fascinating read about every street you can look around, Barnes Boulevard, Roberts Avenue, they're all there, including the little street names, a couple of which are spelt wrong and interesting little quirks in history. So that might be something we might look at. But I'm happy to support the motion tonight. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. We move now to item 9.5, which is the revocation of the instrument of delegation for the Horsham College Community Oval Committee of Management. The purpose of this report is to revoke the instrument of delegation for the Horsham College Community Oval and Community of Management and transition the Committee of Management into a users group forum. Okay, there's a recommendation there, councillors, which has been moved by Councillor Clark and seconded by Councillor Power. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have reviewed a lot of our committees. We had quite a few Section 86 committees, which has quite an onerous responsibility on those committees to comply with regulations, and it becomes just too difficult quite often, and now we're finding with a lot of the committees around our community that it is really hard to find presidents, secretaries, treasurers. People just don't want to step up, excuse me, because the responsibility is so huge. So council have gone through all of the committees. We've found those that do need to be a Section 86, and there's not many of them, where to actually downgrade them into a committee of management or like this, takes away that onerous responsibility and makes it a lot easier for those committees to operate and to find executives within those committees as well. So this is a really good move. This takes off all that responsibility off the committee and makes it a lot easier to manage. So it's really good another one's been lifted away from that heavy duties.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Power.
Thank you, Mayor Rafford. I think Councillor Clark summed it up perfectly.
Thank you. Are there any speakers against the motion? Any other speakers? Councillor Grimble.
Just clarification, just particularly in the wording of the second dot point where it says support the transition of the committee management to an as required user group. I'm assuming that they're going to meet regularly, as I would expect they would be. The wording actually just is a little bit indifferent the way that I read it, so I'm reading it as required, but I'm assuming that they'll have regular meetings and that is the expectation of that group.
Mr O'Brien, would you like to comment, please?
I have for you, Mr Mayor, looking at regular meetings, looking at quarterly meetings throughout the year.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Goldman.
I just wanted to make note that in the discussion part of the piece here, it says the committee have agreed to the recommendation, and it's important that the community and capacity of the building forum may be maintained. So the group is still being used in a really resourceful way.
Yes.
The only thing I want to say is that we do need to continue making sure we support them in as many ways as possible. Being a part of that group and that committee, they're doing as best they can, and just need to make sure that we are still there for them, which I'm sure we will be.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Goldman. Any other speakers? I just wanted to comment on this actual project. It'd be interesting to do a timeline of how that block of land has changed in the last 10 years. The greening of it, we'll be able to get some water to water it, the plumbing of it, the lights, and then the addition of the former restaurant has made it a fantastic facility for our community. And it's been a great partnership between the school, involving the state government at a higher level, but also council from all those days back to when it was just a dry patch of dirt, effectively, with very ordinary rooms. And so I think it's a great story, and this is all part of it. So I'm happy to support tonight's motion. I'll put the motion. All those. Councillor Grimble, certainly.
The question is in the body of the report: how many committees do we still have to change through this process? Do we know that?
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. You.
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor. I believe we've currently got 4 Section 86 committees. We don't have to change them. It's entirely up to us whether we maintain those committees. But at this stage, this will leave us with 3.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Thank you, Councillor Grimble. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. We move now to item 9.6, the 2017-21 Health and Wellbeing Plan Annual Update for 2018. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on the annual review of the 2017-21 Health and Wellbeing Plan, and also to seek approval to notify Department of Health and Human Services of the review completion. It's a recommendation there, councillors. Which has been moved by Councillor Goldman and seconded by Councillor Koenig. Councillor Goldman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just happy to support the recommendation as it is. The work that's been done to get this health and wellbeing plan updated is greatly appreciated, and it's a benefit to our society. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goldman. Councillor Koenig.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just it's worth highlighting some of the accomplishments. The main one that I look at there is the top of the list is the development and adoption of the youth strategy.
Yes.
A lot of work went into that youth strategy by a lot of people, including the youth, which was the most exciting bit about it. So that's exciting. But also into the next year, there's some really good projects and there's some really good focus points that everyone can read at their own leisure. But it's exciting to see how this develops, and it's credit to the team that's behind it. And Michelle Reithers is back on board too, so
yes.
we're all in it. So I'm just happy to see it at this point. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Koenig. Any speakers against the motion? Any other speakers? Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I certainly agree with the previous speakers. I just want to note, I think the significant challenge revolves around the cultural and behavioural change, particularly when we're talking about alcohol and other, well, healthy eating as well as mentioned, but some significant challenges there, and if anyone comes up with some great ideas, well, the rest of the world will be looking on us for the solution there. So I don't think we should kid ourselves that that's a very easy task, but certainly commend everyone for their efforts.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Councillor Grimble.
I was just a query again, just in the terminology of the recommendation provided to Council, and I noticed that we've got a statutory requirement to conduct an annual review, and I just wonder why we're not actually endorsing the annual review and approving the letter. So again, I'm not really sure around the terminology of noting some of these documents that come through Council rather than endorsing. So that's probably a question, but it's a question in my interpretation around what probably would be a stronger wording in the recommendation. So
okay. So thank you, Councillor Grimble. Mr O'Brien.
Through you, Mr Mayor, basically Council has to undertake the review process. So in this case, the review's been undertaken, and we're wanting Council to note that review's been undertaken and communicate that through to DHHS.
Okay. And so what we're doing tonight is approving the letter to DHHS. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr O'Brien. Any further questions, Councillor Grimble?
I'm not sure whether the question got answered in the way that it's me to understand the difference between endorse and note. To my way of thinking, this is a strategic document, and endorsing something actually gives Council's rubber stamp of approval. I'm a little bit unclear about noting the contents and then approving the letter to DHHS. So it's really around my interpretation of the recommendation and what it means to me personally. I'm just
Mr Ball has some comment.
Yeah. Through you, Mr Mayor. We're not actually seeking any direction from Council on this plan, because the plan's already been implemented. So there's no action arising out of the recommendation, and hence the reason we're saying Council just needs to note. And the second one is of course the action. That's where Council is specifically approving it. So that's the reason.
Okay, thank you. You happy with that, Councillor?
no, it's fine. It's okay.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Clark.
Okay, I think it's important that we recognise the breadth of the work that we do to try and keep our community well and healthy. And when we look at the work that's in here, we've got youth, we've got our community directory, engaging our community and letting them know what's out there for their assistance, disability services, accessible facilities, up-to-date information. We've got the Kelpie Road Children's Hub, so that looks after newborns right through to kinder age children. And then we've got the Gender Equity Officer that we're hoping to employ soon. So then we've got the age-friendly community for our older generation. And then of course we've got the Stage 2 Alcohol Cultural Change Project. So you're looking at from birth to death and all in between the services that we provide to try and help our community to have a healthy and their well-being is very important to this council and to this organisation. So I think it's really important we recognise the breadth of work that goes into this plan.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Any other speakers?
Mr Mayor, I have a question.
Councillor Goldman.
Thank you. My question is, how are we promoting the My Directory, the My Community Directory? How are we promoting it?
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Goldman. Mr O'Brien.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So when my community directory was first launched, probably about 12 months ago, we actually did high-level promotion through a media release, and also there was small cards developed, and which were basically handed out to a range of recreation community groups. So we promoted it through that aspect. Also, it was part of the field days. It was on display as well, and so forth. So the community groups that are on my community directory get constant, regular emails as well to remind them update their information to promote their services, not only their clubs and organisations, but any events they are running as well. So there's ongoing promotion, and my community directory is on the front page of the council website as well. So, but basically we have targeted through those particular business cards to all those groups and organisations.
Thank you, Mr O'Brien. Councillor Goldman.
Just a supplementary question. Are we able to promote it further in a newspaper? Because it's something that a lot of people are interested in when they actually know about it, but I've had a lot of people who don't know about it.
Mr O'Brien.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, certainly happy to work with our media communications officer to do some promotion through the our local newsletter or through the local paper, through our regular part of that document, so we can ensure that gets promoted through that aspect.
Okay, Councillor Goldman, happy with that? Thank you. Mr O'Brien, if you don't mind asking and answering one more question, is it available in a hard copy if someone wants one?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, the hard copy is available, and our hard copy is updated each night on PDF. So if you update your club information now, we can produce a hard copy overnight, which gives the latest information. So it's available at the Civic Centre, be printed out, provided to people who want the hard copy version.
Very good. Thank you. You've answered well. Thank you. Okay, I think everybody's had a turn. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. We move now to the 9.7, which is the 2013-16 Disability Access and Action Plan Review. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on the review of the Disability Access and Action Plan 2013-16. The recommendation there to note the review. Moved by Councillor Clark. Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Robertson. Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, this is a very important issue for me. I'm quite passionate about disability access. I've worked 13 years in the field, and it's really important that we constantly review how we're doing as a council in supporting people with disabilities.
Yes.
Because it can happen to anyone. It's quite interesting. I used to do training for groups and for people who are being educated on disability, and to blindfold someone and send them up the street to see how they cope is quite interesting. To put someone in a wheelchair and see how they get around, it's really interesting. So any one of us could have a car accident tomorrow. Any one of us could break our leg and be in a wheelchair like I have a couple of times. So this is not for someone else. This is for the whole community, because this can happen to anyone, anytime. So we must make sure that we are providing proper services, a community that is accessible. And I think one of the big things that we achieved this last year is the Changing Places toilet, which was a really huge outcome for this community and for people passing through who need that kind of facility that gives them the opportunity to actually travel. Where before this facility was built, people could not travel more than an hour or two away from where they live. So I think this is a really great outcome, and we need to continually improve what we're doing.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I certainly endorse the comments of Councillor Clark. I'd just like to add just perhaps a couple of points. We've seen with increased mobility of people who are disabled, increased use of gophers. So from the footpath perspective and access, we need to start thinking beyond just one gopher, but two, because they've got to pass. and Vic Roads have already turned their mind to that. The second point is our footpaths, and I'd just like to make it possible for Mr Martin or Mr O'Brien to comment. We've had a couple of fairly serious injuries of people who've tripped on footpaths. I know we don't have enough money to do everything we want to do with footpaths. I think we currently highlight with yellow paint the problems, but I do know work is occurring to minimise these issues, and perhaps one of the two directors might like to comment on where we're at with that, which I think is very, very important, particularly when you get someone who is a bit frail. They mightn't be old, but they're frail, and they trip on one of our footpath raised sections, and it's difficult because of our moving soils, and ultimately end up in an ambulance and in intensive care.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Mr Martin, would you like to comment?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. As indicated when we had a public question some months ago, I made an indication that we've put together a proposal for this year's budget process, and we're well advanced now with the scoping out of that project and the size of it, and the challenge will be whether we can afford to do all the works in 1 year or in 2, but the intent is to do a catch-up on all the trip hazards around town, do that reconstruction to a better standard so that even with water and soils, that hopefully we get less movement in the future, but it will certainly come before councillors in this year's budget process.
Thank you, Mr Martin. Happy that, Councillor Robertson. Thank you. Any other any councillors speaking against the motion? Are there any other speakers? That's the case. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. Item 9.8, the Evans Way wetland petition. The purpose of this report is to consider a petition received in relation to a wetland adjacent to the southern end of Evans Way, in brackets in South Bank. The recommendation that Council note the actions proposed in response to the residents' petition in relation to wetland adjacent to the southern end of Evans Way. You do indeed. You indeed, Councillor Clark. Thank you. Councillors, we have a recommendation there to note the actions proposed. Someone want to move that, please?
I'm happy to move the recommendation, but I do have just a question that we capture alerting the residents what we're proposing to do. I assume that's not captured in the recommendation provided, but I assume that I'm happy to move the recommendation presented. Okay, so we'll take that as a question first. Mr Martin?
Mr Mayor, in the report it does indicate that we propose to notify the residents subject to the outcome of this discussion.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Councillor Grimble. Someone like to second it, please? Councillor Golvan, thank you. Councillor Grimble.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We've got a procedure around how we deal with petitions like this, and this is one again that is important to the residents, and they've made some requests around maintenance of the wetlands. But it's important that we try to address their concerns in a way that's we're able within our budgetary constraints and the expectations of not only the residents but what the wetlands are designed to do. And as the report outlines there, that they actually have in my mind a number of roles, and they enhance the resilience of developments, but they've been put there to also mitigate flood impact and provide a filter as that flood water moves across the landscape and the river. So they do require maintenance from time to time, and they do have more than just some aesthetics to capture water and to retain water.
Yeah.
As it's outlined in the report, they will dry out, but when this came up to our last council meeting, the rationale behind me looking at a broader picture of some of our wetlands and looking at how we might manage them has come about the fact now we've seen a couple of petitions raised in past around these wetlands and what council can do, and the expectations of the residents. So I think this is relatively straightforward. I note there that there's a little bit of work to be estimated, and just make sure that when we do that work that we provide batters on the wetlands that aren't creating bother for people to work accessing around the wetland, particularly young people, those sort of things. I'm sure that's part of the design feature anyway. But happy to support the recommendation. I think this is a council responding to a request from the community in a way that hopefully will please them.
Yep. Thank you. Councillor Golden.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just supporting what Councillor Green has also said. We've got a community, members of the community, they're coming forward and they're saying that they want a change and council's acting in a way that's going to assist them. So it's just shows you the importance of asking for something and awaiting time. And gratefully we've made an action to assist them, so I'm sure it's going to be greatly appreciated. I do agree that we need to make sure we do notify them of what's happening, and I know that we will, but it's just important that we do so. I'm also looking forward to seeing a subsequent report on the other wetlands in our area and how we can improve them if need be, but just to make sure we're monitoring that as well. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Collin. Are there any speakers against the motion? Are there any other speakers? I'll put the motion, therefore. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Clark, the recommendation was carried. We move now to item 9.9, Contract 09018 Dimboola Minyip Road Reconstruction. The purpose of this report is to award the tender for construction of the Dimboola Minyip Road from Dogwood Road extending 1 kilometre to the west. And there's a recommendation there, councillors. Which has been moved by Councillor Clark. Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Koenig. Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It was pleasing to see that we actually got 3 quotes with this and that it's come in within budget. We have had difficulty in the past getting prices that have come in with budget because of the state government's expanding of their money for roads, and contractors have been able to get lots of work elsewhere. So it's good to see that we've actually got some people coming back and getting some good prices. So that's very important.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Koenig.
No, thank you.
Any speakers against the motion? Are there any other speakers? Councillor Grimble.
Just to note that as part of this work, there's going to be some interaction with the wind farm project. And as noted in the report, we have to work through and manage that process particularly well. But hopefully that will be managed in a way that the works won't be completed, and we'll see some restoration of some of the work done required because of heavy traffic. And I know that in the past some of these wind farms do carry fairly heavy commodities. But acknowledging too that Glover Earth Moving are well known to this council, and obviously they've got the capacity and the skill set to be able to complete the work. So I'm sure that the people who use that road will appreciate the tender being let.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Grimble. Any other speakers? I had a comment, Mr Martin, and correct me if I'm wrong here. So basically the thing I learned on the weekend, that for 1 kilometre of road to be constructed, it costs $291,000. And I think that's a lot of money, but it makes you realise. So my question was: is this road unique in any way, or is that pretty much a good rule of thumb?
Mr Mayor, I suppose the key thing about this one is it's a dual lane construction. We do build some lane roads to a single lane construction, so it does depend to some extent on the standard of construction, but it's a relatively routine section of road, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr Martin. It just highlights when we talk about road construction and at the budget time, and it makes you realise that $300,000 doesn't go far. So anyway, that's what it is. Thank you. I'll move the... certainly, Councillor Grimble.
The question is just around the process of having our neighbouring council also approve the process, the tender process, bearing in mind that it's a municipal boundary, and they've got some interest in this tender as well. So that's just a comment from the Director. Please.
Mr Mayor, as indicated in the report, in effect, Horsham and Yarriambeck take turns in doing upgrades, and perhaps the key thing worth noting from this one is that Yarry Embiak was able to attract the funding on this occasion at a ratio of 2 to 1, whereas Horsham, being a regional city, was only eligible for 1 to 1. So it's been a good collaboration to get the funds on this occasion.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. That's a good question. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. We move now to item 10, which is councillors' reports and acknowledgements. Can I have someone please move that we suspend standing orders for this section, which is moved by Councillor Clark and seconded by Councillor Power. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. So reports and acknowledgements. We've got a little bit of time, so I'm happy to trickle around the table if create an opportunity for. We have a couple of listed reports there, but there's an opportunity if anyone else wants to say anything as well. So, Councillor Goulven, did you want to say anything?
I think I might mention just of appreciation from you for attending on the 7th of December the Holy Trinity Lutheran College and coming in to speak to the students within my class about leadership and the importance of being a good leader and serving others. So the students really benefited from you coming in, and they greatly appreciated the effort that you placed into your presentation to them. But as well as that, they were then running for school captain, and it's great to see the future leaders coming forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goulven. Councillor Clark, did you want to say anything tonight? Okay. Councillor Power, did you want to add to your report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you, Mayor Rafford. Just a couple of acknowledgements. Part of my report was the Wimmera Challenge that was held up at Dinbula. I'd just like to congratulate the guys and the girls down at Goolin that put the program together. It was a 2-day event. A great time was had by all. Dino Lachlan, Deanne King, Jeremy Newell were the 3 major ones that stood out. But there was a great group of people down there at Goolin that actually helped those 3 put the program together. The other one is I'd like to acknowledge the work that Keith Fisher and his crew out at Green Lake, out at the kiosk out there, and the work that they've put in to get the kiosk. I believe it's up and running now. I think I said a couple of weeks ago it was running, but I spoke to Keith and he was hoping it was going to be last weekend. So just congratulations to all those guys for the work they're actually doing for the community.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Power. Councillor Robertson.
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Koenig.
No, thank you.
Councillor Grimble.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There's 2 things I'd like to add. Can I start by just taking the opportunity, since it's our last council meeting, just to express my Christmas wishes to everyone in the municipality, and wish everyone that's travelling have a safe travel. But very clearly that Christmas time for a lot of people is a time to celebrate with family and friends, but that's not always the case for everyone. So we should just reflect on people that are not in fortunate circumstances. And as you know, there's also a lot of expectations and pressures on a lot of people during Christmas time. So I think that I always tap into people who are either single or lonely or don't have the level of family support that many of us do share. And I think it's important we do reflect that it's not. It is a good time, but not for everyone. The final thing I wanted to acknowledge was to offer condolences to the Butler family. Len Butler was a Wimmera Shire councillor, and his funeral was today. And I think it would be appropriate if council actually acknowledged his civic service in the usual way. But his family still farm out at Drung, and he served in the Wimmera Shire for one term between 1988 to 1990. So it's again condolences to the Butler family, and I do acknowledge his civic leadership and service not only to the council but through his time, through his public life and in the district where he was brought up. So, end of my report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Grimble. There's 2 things I wanted to mention. Just picking a couple of things out of my report. It was really important for our regional mayors to get together. So the 6 of us got together last week, and it was a great sharing time. We have a real breadth of experience. So certainly Councillor Carolyn from Bullock Shire as her first year as a mayor, and Councillor Kevin from the Northern Grampian Shire, who's his 5th term as mayor. And so there was a great opportunity to sort of share different ideas about what's happening in our patch. but also lessons we can learn from each other. And one of the things to come out of it was they're keen for us, when I say us, Horsham, to perhaps organise some councillor training. So we're going to contact the MAV or someone similar to do some conflict of interest training. They would find that of value. And so that was a worthwhile thing. And I did note too, it's not in here, but also our regional CEOs get together in a similar way on a regular basis. And I think that's good to just sort of have that relationship. The other thing I wanted to mention was the very last dot point on my report was about the overland train. And so the story was that the overland, the South Australian government pulled their funding, which was just over $300,000, their share of the funding, if you like. Currently, prior to that happening, our own state government sponsors the overland, and it's done for a while, to the tune of over $3 million. And so what happened last week, the state government agreed to kick in another 200, and the balance, which 130, was actually kicked in by Great Southern Rail themselves. And the reason I know that is because I rang them up during the week, and the lady explained to me what had happened. The reason I rang them, you might be interested to know that Anne and I are going to do some science. We're going to catch the overland to Adelaide as part of our holidays and just see what it's like. And so we went up to and spoke to Roger, the master up here, and to talk about some tickets and what it might cost and stuff. But it was interesting that he has no timetables or no brochures about the overland. And so I contacted our visitor information centre. And I spoke to Andrea, our new boss, and said, "What have you got about the overland, you know?" Well, we don't have anything. And I thought, hang on a sec. The overland creates an opportunity. It creates the opportunity for people in the Wimmera to go to Adelaide or to Melbourne, okay, and come back. And it also creates people in Melbourne to come to the Wimmera, and also in Adelaide to come for the Wimmera. So I rang up the GSR, and the lady, Stephanie, was very helpful, but she said, and I don't want to get a quote wrong, but I'm pretty sure I interpreted that the way they view the overland is a commuter train from Melbourne to Adelaide. And so we had this discussion about, well, there might be a little bit more opportunity there to explore about how ways we can help each other out. And so we're getting too excited. We're going to catch the train and see what it's like in February. So I'll keep you informed on how that goes. But we did send a note to the Premier acknowledging their ongoing support for the train, which is a good thing. Roger did give me some statistics. We do have local residents who catch the train both ways. Most of the time they'll go to Melbourne, but there are quite a few people who do catch it the other way. Yeah, so I'll keep you informed on that. Okay, and also pick up Councillor Grimmel's comment. We certainly want to wish the community all the best for the Christmas season and encourage people to take it easy on those busy roads. Okay, can I have someone move us, please, that we resume standing orders, which is being moved by Councillor Power and seconded by Councillor Clark. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. And we also have to move that we receive those reports. So that's once again moved by Councillor Power and seconded by Councillor Clark. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Item 11 is urgent business, as none listed. Item 12 is petitions and joint letters, which is also there is none listed. We move now to item 13, which is the procedural business. Item 13.1 is the Assembly of Councillors record of meetings. The purpose of this agenda item is to receive and note the Assembly of Councillors minutes for the council briefings meetings held on the 3rd of December and the 10th of December. Item 13.2 is the sealing of documents, and the purpose of that is to receive and note the sealing of the following document, which is the licence with the cafe by the river. And there's a recommendation there, councillors, that council receives and notes the following agenda items: 13.1, Assembly of Councillors, and 13.2, the sealing of documents. Someone like to move that? Moved by Councillor Clark. And someone like to second that? Councillor Koenig. Thank you. Councillor Clark, do you have anything to say? Councillor Koenig. Are there any speakers? Councillor Grimble.
Mr. Mayor, just to announce, as of today, there's quite a bit of media coverage around Mr. Andrew Broad's appointment as Assistant Minister. I understand that he's actually stepped down from that role, and there's some other processes happening at this stage. But again, this is correspondence that predates that arrangement.
We'll get to the correspondence next. Any further speakers on the sealing of documents in Assembly of Councillors? Two items I wanted to pick up. I just wanted to note the fantastic presentation by the group about the Horsham Regional Museum, which is going through a planning process. That was very encouraging to hear the enthusiasm. And also for the Wimmera Leadership Group, their presentation, facilities along the Wimmera River. And for your interest, their work was presented to the Horsham Police and Community Group on Friday, which includes representatives from the Wimmera River Improvement Committee, and Mr Martin was very well received for your interest. So great work by those two groups. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Okay, over the page to 13.3, which is inward correspondence. The purpose of this agenda item is to receive and note inward correspondence, one from the office of Jenny Makakos MP and also one from the Honourable Andrew Broad MP. There's a recommendation that Council receives and note the agenda item inward correspondence, which has been moved by Councillor Koenig, seconded by Councillor Clark. Thank you. Councillor Koenig, Councillor Clark, any comments? I just wanted to pick up the little pencil mark from Andrew Broad about his comment about returning of passenger rail, and I think that's a signal to keep on going, and which we will do in the new year. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. Item 13.4, Council Committee Minutes, none. Notice of motions, none. Confidential matters. There are confidential items for consideration tonight. Can someone please move that the doors be closed and then we move into confidential matters? Moved by Councillor Goulburn and Councillor Robertson. Thank you. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. And I ask now that the members of the gallery leave so that the meeting can move into confidential matters. Thank you.